The United States Supreme Court has spoken, but the controversy over the federal health care law is only gaining momentum. The High Court upheld most of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, considered President Barack Obama's signature domestic policy achievement. Many states have moved to comply with the law through implementation of state health care exchanges, but Oklahoma is not one of them. Governor Mary Fallin has announced she has no plans to call a special legislative session to address that. So the question remains, where does Oklahoma go from here?
The frenzy on the steps of the United States Supreme Court began in March when justices began hearing oral arguments in an unprecedented 3-day hearing over the controversial health care law.
Protect the law. Protect our care.
Many court observers believe justices were leaning toward eliminating the individual mandate, which requires all citizens to have health insurance or face a penalty. When the court handed down its decision, news outlets rushed to be the first to break the news. CNN and Fox News got it wrong, saying the court had struck down the individual mandate. In reading the decision, you can see how that might have happened. It said the individual mandate is not a valid exercise of Congress's power under the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. But reading further, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote that the individual mandate must be construed as imposing a tax on those who do not have health insurance, and that the mandate is permissible as an exercise of Congress's power to tax.
It was very confusing because I think the first reports were the mandate is overturned. No, the mandate is upheld. No, it's not a mandate, it's a tax. So it was a little confusing.
Dr. John Schuman is with the University of Oklahoma School of Community Medicine. He also writes a blog called The Glass Hospital for the online edition of the Atlantic Monthly magazine. Schuman has researched and written extensively about the Affordable Heath Care Act.
But I would say that I am actually happy with the decision. I mean, I think we had to do something as a country. I definitely agree that the law is extremely complex. There's a lot of things that a lot of people don't like about the law, many things I don't like about it. But I think I really give Chief Justice Roberts a lot of credit for really delivering on the promise of interpreting the Constitution and not trying to make policy from the bench.
Many Oklahoma lawmakers don't agree.
I was shocked. I was dumbfounded. Our Constitution is one of limited government, and to twist the idea that taxation was appropriate for what the Obamacare legislation called for is to say that white is black, that left is right.
When the legislation was passed, I mean, the administration was very careful to not call it a tax in order to get that passed through. I mean, that was a sort of a defining moment, defining terminology within that legislation. So now for it to be taxed, might be interesting to send it back to the Congress under those terms and have them vote again.
They agree with University of Tulsa law professor Marguerite Chapman on this point.
I think we shift from a legal argument now to a political argument. And so I think that the next round will be played out at the ballot box and in all the preliminaries leading up to the November general election.
Chapman says if President Obama is not reelected and/or the Democratic majority in the United States Senate is broken by the voters, the law will likely be repealed. But she says Oklahoma will be in a predicament if the law is not repealed.
Which would basically mean that come January 1st, 2013, we don't have a state-run healthcare insurance exchange program. That means that the federal government would then step in to provide the program.
Representative Glenn Mulready and Senator Brian Crane tried to anticipate responding to the requirements of the Affordable Care Act last legislative session. They tried to pass a bill that would have set up an Oklahoma health exchange by expanding the Insure Oklahoma program. The bill was voted down, and both Crane and Mulready took political heat from opposition, claiming their efforts were succumbing to what they call Obamacare.
It is something that is designed, run, and overseen by Oklahomans, for Oklahomans, and not something that we can expect a Washington, D.C. bureaucrat or someone from California or New York to be saying we're going to adapt this to Oklahoma's needs.
Mulready says if Obama is reelected, lawmakers will again have to debate how to proceed.
We could choose to move forward with a compliant state-based exchange. We could choose to just say to the federal government, no, we've built this, we're going to keep our own thing, but this has nothing to do with the federal health care law. You go do your own thing. and build a federal insurance exchange. We could have that option as well.
The federal government could be here after January 1st. What do we do then? You won't be in session then.
We certainly have options in regards to that. If Governor Fallin believes that it's necessary to call the legislature into special session on this particular issue, it's certainly within her right, and I believe the legislature would be eager to address any intrusion that the federal government is making on Oklahoma, the citizens of Oklahoma's individual liberties.
Dr. Gerard Clancy is president of OU Tulsa. He says he's still very mixed on the health care law, but does like some aspects of it, as do many citizens.
The areas that really get the strongest endorsement were that you can carry your children on your health care coverage until age 26. And people have been pleased with the limits on pre-existing conditions, such that you can't get kicked off or can't be enrolled because of pre-existing conditions.
But like many others, Clancy believes the controversy is still far from over.
I think resistance against the individual mandate will continue forward. And you'll see that from individuals who do not want to go along with this. I think we'll see that from employers who don't want to have to go with their side of being forced to purchase insurance coverage for their employees when they can't afford it.
If citizens refuse to go along with the individual mandate, here is what they will pay. In 2014, the penalty tax is $95 per adult and $47.50 per child. In 2015, it would be $325 per adult and $162.50 per child. And in 2016 and beyond, it would rise to $695 per adult and $347 per child. Mulready believes even if Mitt Romney becomes president, the repeal process won't be easy.
It still is a monstrosity to unravel that legislation. There are a lot of things tied up in that other than health care. The student loan programs and even some of the programs that have been implemented already. So, I mean, it will be quite the thing to unravel. Even it's not like you snap our fingers and that goes away.
Both lawmakers believe the legislature will have to take some action regardless of whether the Affordable Care Act is repealed or not.